Hi, my name is Judge. Yesterday, there were 27 buffs to Hearthstone cards, or Hearthstone effects within cards, announced to the game across a lot of standard cards changed, a lot of wild cards changed. Pretty awesome to see the willingness to make such large-scale changes. What we're going to do, of course, is take a look at all of these changes real briefly and look at how the changes are going to affect those cards in the arena. Let's take a look. Starting just in the order that they have it in the patch notes, we've got Celestial Alignment going from set each player to 0 mana crystals, set the cost of all cards in hands and decks to 1. Instead, to set your mana crystals to 0, set the cost of all cards in your hand and deck to 1. Pretty much that just leaves the opponent's deck alone and only affects your deck. So this goes from being completely unplayable to being somehow even more unplayable. Don't worry about this one. The card sucks and still sucks. Next we have a change to, not a particular card, but to the Stag Spirit Wild Seed, which is the big Wild Seed, the 5/4, 3 turns dormant, equip a 4/2 Great Bow. Now it changes to a 3/2 Great Bow, so a slight nerf there. This will technically make the Wild Seed cards worse. There are 4 Wild Seed cards, by the way, and those are Spirit Poacher, Wild Spirits, Stag Charge, and Arelon. And as much as, yeah, it's technically a nerf, the cards are all still going to be busted. That's not going to change. Does it really matter if you're playing a 5-mana 15/14, equip a 4/2 weapon, or a 5-mana 15/14, equip a 3/2 weapon? No, not really. Technically a nerf, but I don't really think it's going to affect the stats in Arena, like, at all, because all the cards are just so broken, whether it's a 3/2 or 4/2 weapon anyway. So cool, yeah, it's nerfed. Could use several more changes probably to make it balanced, but hey, it's something, I suppose. Next we've got, oh, this one's so lovely, this one's so good. Snowfall Guardian goes from its former 6-mana 3/3 Battlecry, freeze all other minions, gain +1/+1 for each frozen minion, to 5 attack, 5 health. Battlecry, freeze all other minions. So pretty much they've gone ahead and just given this -7/-7, which is a pretty big nerf. So this goes from being my personal least favorite card of all time to being not good. Which, good riddance. Good riddance. The effect is still, like, okay, because you can just not attack with your own stuff, and then play this, and then you still get them all attacking next turn, but the stats, it just isn't worth the cost. It's not worth running. Snowfall Guardian is dead. Next, we have Vile Library, which was give a friendly minion +1/+1, repeat for each imp you control. Now, instead of giving it the initial +1/+1, is just +1/+1 for the imps, which makes this in Arena go from actually weirdly okay, despite, even if you don't have imps, at least you get to get some stats, and then maybe you get like +2/+2 for imps, +1/+1 on something else, sure. Now it kind of sucks, unless you have like 3 Fiendish Circles, then cool, go for it. But without the consistency of getting something from it, this gets a lot worse, so it's a big hit in Arena to Vile Library. We have Cobalt Illusionist, which goes from 4 mana to 5 mana. So it goes from being pretty bad to being absolutely terrible. Not really something you were looking to pick up anyway. Okay. This card, by the way, if you're wondering why this was changed, if you kind of only watch Arena, this card was a big problem in Wild. The Big Rogue has been just absolutely crushing in ways that aren't super fun, so that's why this change was made. It never really was that good in Arena. Next we have Relic Vaults going from 3 mana to 2 mana. And I think this change is pretty irrelevant for Arena, because in a deck where you don't really have the Relic synergy, it's still going to be terrible. In a deck that you did, yeah, okay, so it's gonna be better in a deck that has the synergy, but in general, it's not really going to matter because you're not going to have the synergy. So, still not something you're looking to pick up because it's cheaper, but you're looking to pick it up if you have a ton of relics, which you are already doing anyway. It'll be better in those decks, but I don't really see the Relic package being consistent enough to work for Arena. That being said, Relic of Extinction is also getting a buff from 2 mana to 1 mana. Same story. I mean, 1 mana, deal 1 damage to a random enemy minion twice is not good. And you need to evaluate Arena cards on their own, not with synergistic effects. Yeah, great. If you have a bunch of relics, somehow you get lucky, you get a bunch of relics and you pick this up. There was recently a micro adjust in Arena. Maybe they did increase the relic offering rate to make this more possible. That's could be. But unless that's the case, going for relics is just not really going to be the technically right choice unless you're just trying to meme around and go for it. In a deck that has a bunch of them, great, it gets better. Other than that, still, eh. We've got Bibliomite getting a buff, going from a 4/4 to a 5/4. And this one's really interesting because the question, of course, has to be how many stats do you need on a minion for discarding a card to not be that important? Because 4/4 clearly wasn't the answer. And I don't think it was in the Arena. The card's okay. It becomes good if you have the discard synergies, like refilling your hand. Cool. Does adding 1 attack make this go from being fine to good? Maybe. It can trade into 2 5s. That's pretty big. I feel like if you wanted to really buff this, it goes to 5 health for Arena. Not sure that the 5 attack and keeping the same health is going to cut it. But it's definitely a relevant change. Definitely a relevant change. I'd say this probably goes from being, meh, don't really want this card, to, yeah, okay, I could go for this. So, the jury's still out on that one for sure. It's going to be interesting to see how much that one stat actually makes this potentially playable. We have Magnifying Glass going from 2 attack and 2 durability to 3 attack and 2 durability, which is a huge buff. Very, very huge, because we go from a weapon that is not good for just the cost and the stats of the weapon to one that is a Fiery War Axe, which is a fine Arena card, especially in Demon Hunter, where you can sometimes press the button to make it a 4 attack weapon and clear a couple 3/4s or what have you. The effect is cool, but now you don't have to just rely on that in Arena, and you can just take this and kind of be happy with a weapon anyway. I'm a big fan of this change. Looks solid. Next, we have another Demon Hunter change. Abyssal Depths goes from 4 mana to 3 mana. 4 mana, it was kind of unplayable. You don't want to draft that for 4 mana. 3 mana? Is it better or worse than Arcane Intellect? Probably worse. But you get to weed out, like, drawing the 2 lowest cost minions just for some cheaper cycle to maybe thin out your deck so you're not top decking as bad is not, like, terrible. I'd say this is worse than Arcane Intellect, but it's pickable now. It's draftable now. Something that you play once you've run out of steam entirely, just to get those bad top decks out of the way, get them on board. Maybe next turn top deck something good. It's pickable. Still probably not good, though. Next, we have a Battleworn Vanguard going back to its former self. It went from being a 2/2 to a 2/1, and now it's back to a 2/2. So this card was busted, and then went and was just like, fine, good even, and now it's going to be back to being busted again. This card is insane. It spirals out of control. Having it down to 1 actually meant you could ping it away with a Demon Hunter, a Mage, a Rogue, a Druid. Now you can't again, and it's going to be back to being busted. Going to be interesting to see how this card fares over the next few years, because they keep printing some very, very strong cards, so it might not be as much of a problem when it returns to the Arena. Remember, not all of these cards are in the Arena at this time, since Standard and Arena don't share the same sets, and Battleworn Vanguard is not in right now. Will be again eventually. So I think it's still going to be pretty busted, though. A card with this amount of stats for this cheap, really tough to have that kind of be taken away in power level over the years, even if we do print strong cards. Ironbound Brute goes from 8 mana to 7 mana. Like before, we have a card being reverted to its former glory. This card is an Ogre with Taunt. It goes from being pretty bad for 8 mana, because you really need... With 8 mana, you need synergy with this. You need draw to make this good, and that's not always going to happen in the Arena. But now, you don't need draw for it to be good, because it's an Ogre with Taunt, and that's completely fine. Not saying that it's like going to be great. There's a lot of really big statted mid-game minions now, but it's going to be completely draftable, playable. Maybe you get a couple of other card draws in. Same as it was before. Just a solid pickup. Even good. Like, it was good. Because at its worst, it's a better Ogre. And at its best, it's really, really strong. The next change is going to be completely irrelevant for the Arena. We have the Legendary Invitations going from 3 mana to 2 mana. And now these are generated by a Paladin Legendary called the Countess. And in order to get these legendary invitations, you have to have a deck with 0 neutrals, or you have to be in fatigue, right? And that doesn't happen in Arena. So you're pretty much just paying for a War Golem. Whether the legendary invitations are 3 mana or 2 mana is completely irrelevant. And even if you do manage to shuffle the invitations into your... Wait, you put them right into your hand, right? This ain't duels. You put them right into your hand. Even if you are able to get them into your hand, 3 mana invitations would probably win the game on the spot, the same as 2 mana invitations anyway. So, but you're never going to see it. Next, I think we have my favorite change so far, and that is Stand Against Darkness goes from 5 mana to 4 mana. And this change reminds me a ton of the change that was once made to Fiendish Circle, becoming 3 mana. And this is very similarly a huge change. A 4 mana 5/5 is amazing. It is a lot of stats. A lot of people underrate cards that summon 1/1s and ignore the 1/1s being really stats, and they are. And I think this card goes from being, okay, whatever, it's playable but not that good, to this is a very, very good card to play on turn 4. Split stats with overstatted is amazing. Yeah, you're going to get hit by a Bunker Sergeant or an Arcane Explosion or something like that sometimes, but at least you also have to get your opponent to extend and play some AoE to deal with it. I think much like Fiendish Circle, this goes from to this is great. Looking forward to drafting a bunch of those. Next, we have another Paladin buff. War Horse Trainer goes from giving your Silver Hand recruits +1 attack to giving them +2 attack and taunt. And that's, the main thing in Arena is it's a 3 mana 3/4. Solid, you can play it on curve. But the buff is huge. Like, you have 1 Silver Hand recruit on board, getting that extra ping in for 0 extra mana with this buff is huge. Even having some 3/1 taunts on the board can be very annoying. I think this is a really strong buff. It's not going to be often that the buff matters so much because you're just playing this for the fine body. But that's a really good buff. And I think this goes from being like a good 3 to being like a borderline somewhere in between good and premium 3. Strong buff. Next we have Promotion. Give a Silver Hand recruit +3/+3 was what it used to be. Now it's the same, except you also gain taunt. I think this is going to be actually fairly irrelevant because mostly what you care about is the stat gain in Arena, and it's the same amount of stats. Great, they have taunt. Sure, it's an upgrade, but I don't really think it's much. You can hide something behind it. It's really just about the +3/+3 for the most part, though. So cool, not really super relevant, I don't think. Next up we have one that surprised quite a few players in Constructed. Edwin, Defiance Kingpin, gets 1 mana cheaper, goes from 4 mana to 3 mana, and also loses +1/+1. So it goes from a 4 mana 4/4 to a 3 mana 3/3, which definitely is a buff, as it gives you more room to draw more cards and gain more stats. Imagine you get to play 1 more card, or even half of 1 card on average, more because of this buff. Then you're going to be giving a card -1 mana and +1/+1 and a draw 1 card, which is huge. This is an enormous buff. Even in Arena. Obviously, this is going to be a constructed combo with the Nerf Smite, and, it's just going to be run in some light rogues, for sure. But even in Arena, this buff is huge. If you think about all the effects you get of drawing 1 more card, you give any card a draw 1 card or draw 1 extra card, and it becomes a lot better. And this does a lot more than that. This is actually a much bigger buff than I think some people realize. And that'll be taking this from being cool refresh to very, very good refresh. Big change here, actually. Next, we have, oh my goodness, Sprint. Goes from 6 mana to 5 mana. So it was 7, now it's 6, now it's 5. And that change makes sense. It still wasn't really good at 6 mana. And now at 5 mana, I feel like that's the sweet spot for this to be good. You can draft a really light rogue, get a lot of nice tempo, maybe equip a dagger, get some weapon synergy, and start just pumping minions. Tempo minions on the board, and you can even top out at a sprint or 2 for refresh. Myra's Unstable Element was running Constructed because you could just really flood in aggro decks. You could really flood the board once again. You get a lot of good draw for not too much. 5 mana was just like the right amount to keep the pressure coming. And I think that's where this lies, where it's like it's enough it's cheap enough that you can play it to reapply pressure without losing all your pressure. So I'm a big fan of that change. I think that's going to be quite a good card in tempo aggro rogues. Next, we have more card draw buff for Rogue. Silverleaf Poison goes from 2 mana to 1 mana. So 2 mana draw 2, but a little slower, which is good. It's good. It's not insane. The slowness of it was important. Goes to 1 mana draw 2, but a little slower. Half price, I think, makes this way better. Half price on a card draw card, super, super good. And that's only if you're daggering that it's going to be draw 2. Of course, there can be other weapons with higher durability that you can draw even more cards, but generally this is going to be a 1 mana draw 2 over 2. A great play for after you've run out of pressure. Not really good for turn 2 or 3, but on turn 7 or 8, when you're mixing in a dagger with a 5-drop, playing this and putting on the pressure, keeping the draw coming, is very, very good. I think that's a very, very strong buff. Next is Halkias, the legendary for Rogue, which gains Stealth. So this is a big deal for this card because, of course, if you store this inside of a secret upon its death, and then the secret is triggered, your opponent can no longer just kill this to stop it from happening again, because it gains Stealth now. So they trigger the secret, this comes back with Stealth, and then you can play another secret before trading it into something. So that's pretty huge. Now, secret synergy isn't super common in Rogue. In Arena, it's tough to make work, but as far as the individual buff for the card, it's big. And also, honestly, a 4 mana 5/4, if you've got a rough legendary choice, 4 mana 5/4 Stealth is pretty good. So I think that's a very strong buff for Halkai. Some really good buffs for Rogue here. Next, we get into Warrior. We have Sanguine Deaths, which goes from dealing 1 damage to a minion and giving it +1 attack to dealing 1 damage to a minion and giving it +2 attack. And I'm kind of surprised this wasn't how it was upon release. This is kind of what I expected it to do, to be honest, based on stuff like Cruel Taskmaster. I thought that's just what it did, and now it does what I kind of thought it was intended to do. The card becomes, well, it's not nearly as good as any other location, so it feels not as good to draft, but it's still okay. This will be good. It's not going to be as good as Mage, Paladin, Priest, Shaman locations, not even close, but it's going to be a good pickup, a good tempo pickup, gaining that much more attack. So that's solid. I'm glad they did this. This is what it seems like it should have been in the first place. Warrior also gets Imbued Axe buffed. Pretty tame buff here. It goes from 3 mana 2/3. After your hero attacks, give your damage minions +1/+1. Now it's +1/+2, and the infused stays the same at +2/+2. So if you're playing this infused, which it's pretty easy to do with infused 2, then it's not going to change. When it's going to change is when you top deck it and need to play it right away without killing your stuff off. You're going to gain some extra health, sure. Not going to be super relevant. Again, it's better, but not going to be super relevant when the card's already just really good in Arena. But seems like Warrior needed some love and constructed, so why not make that a bit of a heftier buff. Next, we have Cruel Taskmaster. The classic goes from being a 2/2 to a 2/3, making this card go from being great to being premium. I don't think I would call Cruel Taskmaster premium as the 2/2. I'd just call it really good in Arena, and now it's premium. It's amazing. 2 mana 2/3 is a solid stat line, and you get to deal 1 damage. Great. Or, in the mid-game, you get to deal 2 extra damage. Crazy. Really, really strong. Already was good, and now it's just a premium card. And we have Tidal Revenant going from gaining 5 armor, being reverted, back to gaining 8 armor. So this goes from being completely busted to being completely busted. It started out as completely busted, then it was also busted, and now it's busted again. So that's what's going on with Tidal Revenant. Cool. I mean, 3 armor doesn't really matter so much. It's technically a nerf and then a buff, but for Arena, this card has not changed, like, ever. And Shield Shatter getting reverted as well, going back to dealing 5 damage to all minions. Looks like they're trying to revert. They might have gone too far on Control Warrior in Constructed, and now they're reverting a lot of those Control Warrior tools back to what they used to be. Shield Shatter goes to 5 damage AoE, and I gotta be honest, I didn't think it'd be like the biggest deal. I mean, Flame Strike going to 5 was a big deal, and Shield Shatter is too. I actually drafted a few Shield Shatters at dealing 4, and the amount of times I was like really wishing it was gonna deal 5 was numerable. It was a lot. So I think this is a big change. It's a solid AoE card for Arena. And I think it just felt a little bit weaker because you don't have the armor consistency. So you're usually paying a lot for the AoE. Now you get something more akin to a Flame Strike, and I think that 5 probably is worth the 10 mana with the discount. I think I liked it at 5 better than 4. It seemed a little tame at 4. Wow, a classic card here, Slam, getting buffed from 2 mana to 1 mana. Slam was fine. I think Slam used to be really, really good, and then like power creep happened, and this is the purpose of these changes, right? Is now cards are so much stronger than they used to be, so we need to buff some old cards to make up for it, and that's exactly what's happening here. As Slam goes to 1 mana, goes from being okay, decent, to this is amazing. 1 mana, deal 2 damage, draw a card. That's crazy. Combos with your now 1 mana execute, right? We had it at 2 mana for a bit there. And that's great. I mean, really, really strong. 1 mana, deal 2 used to just be Arcane. Arcane Shot, Holy Smite used to be that. And this is just great even if you don't... If you don't draw a card, it's okay. But usually you are drawing a card, and this is just fantastic. Cheap cycle and tempo. And another buff for Warrior, and our last buff of the update is Bash. Goes from 3 mana to 2 mana, and given the nature of 2 mana deal 3 damage... we've seen a lot of buffs on a lot of cards printed that the cards are better than Frostbolt. We've seen the new Infuse 2 mana mage spell that you get multiple copies. We've seen Frostbite and Shaman, which is just such an increase. So Bash definitely getting pretty outdated with just that 3 armor, and dealing 3 damage, getting 3 armor seems to make a lot more sense at 2 mana than 3 mana. So really, really makes a ton of sense, and Warrior needed the help. So we'll see how these changes affect Arena when all of these cards, especially Alterac, a few changes there, are back in. But I from that whole list, I'm a big fan of most of those changes. A couple of them are going to be irrelevant. The Wild Seed change seemed to be just a little bit of a tap that isn't going to do anything. And the Relic changes probably won't be relevant for Arena. But most of these changes just take cards that were either okay or good and make them good to great. And that's cool, and that's fun, and it needs to happen in order to keep up with all these insane cards that are coming out each expansion. So there you have it. If you think that I've made a terrible error in judgment on evaluating these cards, please, by all means, I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments below. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.
My name is Judge.
Whose name is Judge?
My name is...
Whose name is Judge?
My name is...
That's a silly name.
Judge.
Okay.